This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we're very fortunate tonight to have as our guest one of the top political figures in the state. We got a real sitting congressman with us today. Congressman Gary Palmer from the 6th District, and Congressman Palmer's been in Congress for 10 years now. He's become a power in Washington. You know, seniority is very prevalent in Washington, very important. So he's got a little bit of tweak in his district, though. We've been, having these new candidates who are running for this new 2nd Congressional District on, and y'all trying to get to know them. But his district has been tweaked because that one's been tweaked. He has always had Jefferson and Shelby and the suburbs of Jefferson and Shelby, but in the 6th District. But he comes down and gets a Target Elmore now. Congressman, good to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me on, Steve. It's good to see you.
You don't mind me calling you Gary, do you?
Everybody calls me Gary.
We're the same age.
Everybody.
We're the same age.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit older than you, not much older than though.
I'll be 70 in May.
You look a lot younger than me, though. You still look young. Gary, you wrote the best tribute for old Jabbo for that book I'm doing on Jabbo. That was a good one.
I love Jabbo. I probably known Jabbo 45 years. When I moved to Birmingham, I became a member of the church where Jabbo and Marilyn were, and
they were the Homeway Church of Christ.
Yeah, at that time, and he's just the kind of guy that you make friends with immediately. He's a welcoming kind of guy.
He really is. That's the best way to describe him. We talk about Jabbo Wagner, folks. He's represented Vestavia in the state Senate for 50 years now, broken the state record. But Gary Palmer has always been a conservative, always been a Republican before it was cool. So he was a natural for that congressional seat. He ran and founded the Alabama Policy Institute. What year did you found that, Gary?
Started in 1989. I worked for a couple of international engineering companies and felt called to leave that and start what was at first the Alabama Family Alliance and then became the Alabama Policy Institute.
Yeah. But you never were tied with that, how should I say, Dan Ireland. You weren't tied with him. He was religious. His was more, yours as a policy was a policy.
We were faith-based too, but not affiliated with anybody else. We worked in association with a ministry called Focus on the Family, James Dobson, but also worked with the Heritage Foundation, American Enterprise Institute, groups like that. And we wore both hats. We did the family policy stuff, but also the economic and tax and environment. Because my view is, Steve, is that all public policy is family policy, and people are finding that out for sure now because they go to the grocery store and they see the price of groceries and realize that the Biden administration's policies are having an impact on their family. They go to the gas station, they get their utility bills at home, and it becomes pretty evident pretty quick that these economic issues, these environment and energy issues impact families.
Gary, when you were doing the Policy Institute, you were happy doing that. You didn't necessarily think about running for Congress or anything, did you?
No, it's not something I wanted to do. I had been encouraged a lot to run.
You've done a good job.
Well, thank you.
In 10 years.
My wife, I think, would have to take credit for me actually deciding to run because when Spencer
That's surprising. Most wives don't like that.
Well, she doesn't want anything to do with politics, but
she wanted you to run, though.
But, well, what happened was when Spencer announced his retirement, a lot of people came to me, key people here in Alabama that came to me and said, you need to run. And initially I said I would, and I did a lot of work in Washington through the think tank. Like I said, a lot of work with the Heritage Foundation and other groups. I worked on Clarence Thomas's confirmation with the White House. I did a lot of work on judicial nominations. And about 2 weeks after I initially said I'd run, I had some meetings in Washington and flew home on a Friday morning, Steve, and I was having a Jonah moment. I wasn't going to wait for someone to throw me off the boat. I was getting off the boat. Went in and told the managing chairman of API that I'd decided not to run, and he was upset with me, wanted me to.
He wanted you to run for Congress.
Yeah, he didn't want. He said, "Don't make an announcement. I want you to pray about it over the weekend. Come see me first thing Monday morning." At the end of the day, I went home, and
It was on a Friday.
it was on a Friday. Sat down at the kitchen table with my wife Ann, and I told her that I decided not to run. And she looked at me and said, "You know, for years I've heard you say what's wrong with the country is you can't get good people to run." She said, "I've even heard you compare it to having to go to war." She said, "How can you expect somebody else to go if you won't?"
Mm-hmm.
And then she said, "I know this is not what we want, but I don't think it's about what we want." She said, "I think it's about what we're supposed to do." And she said, "I think we're supposed to do this." So I knew I had to do it.
When I hear was Ann from up in your neck of the woods where you were born and raised up in Hackleburg?
No, she was
You were
from-
Haleyville or Hackleburg?
I was Hackleburg. I was born in Haleyville. I was
Yeah.
Hackleburg.
Well, you and Adderhope probably you knew his daddy well, didn't you?
I knew of his dad.
Uh-huh.
I grew up dirt poor. My dad had about an 8th grade education. He was a logger
In
in
Hackleburg.
Hackleburg and
Is Hackleburg in Winston or Marion?
Marion.
It's around the corner, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's more in the north part of the county on the way to Russellville. It's between
Right.
Hamilton and Russellville. But
I've been to Hackleburg, yeah.
yeah, Dad started taking. I've got 2 brothers. My youngest brother's 12 years younger than me, and I got a sister, but I got a brother a year and a half younger than me. And every summer, we went to the woods with him. And I mean, by the time
Were
I
you all
was in 6th
Pulpwood
grade,
people or something?
pulpwood and logs. But by the time I was in 6th grade, I could gear up a mule and skid logs.
Uh-huh.
And then
Your brother's older than you or younger than you? They were.
he's a year and a half younger than me.
Uh-huh.
So we both learned to work and.
But now you went to the University of Alabama. Out of what high school would you have gone to?
Hackleburg.
Hackleburg at high school.
Yeah.
Well, now, tornado tore that place up though several years ago.
Everything I grew up with, pretty much in the town and the school, was all destroyed. They built a beautiful new school. Hackleburg actually made the state playoffs, made the quarterfinals maybe this last time.
Well, which brings me to this point. You played football. You walked on to Alabama, didn't you?
Yeah, I practiced football at Alabama.
Very bright.
Yeah.
We were walking. What position you played?
I was a wide receiver and a running back at Alabama, and then I was invited to try out for a semi-pro team, and I wound up starting at safety on the semi-pro team.
Did you play what position you played in high school at Hackleburg?
Steve, I didn't play in high school.
You didn't play high school football. You played it up and walked over to Alabama.
My dad, like I said, had about an 8th grade education, and he liked baseball, and I played baseball. I was scouted in baseball. But he wouldn't let me play football, and I told him I'd go to college and play, and he laughed at me. And for 2 reasons, nobody in my family on either side had ever gone to college. And I weighed 125 pounds when I was in the 10th grade.
Is that all you weighed?
In the 10th grade. And when I was at Alabama, I was between 185 and 190. But
Would Bron ever give you any time when you were walking on?
first football game I ever played in was a JV game against Georgia Tech.
Well, Bron, did you play pretty good?
I was pretty good.
How in the world did you get to walk on? You never had played high school football.
Well,
Did you go see Brian or somebody?
I went in. They have a coach, Gary White, who
Oh yeah,
is a great guy.
he was an academic guy, really
Yeah.
too.
And that's who I had to go see. But when I went up to the offices, I actually walked into Coach Bryant's office by mistake, and he was standing there. I'll never forget it. He had on a light blue shirt, had a cigarette in his hand. There was a cloud of smoke around his head. It was like I'd walked into Mount Olympus. But I went on down and saw Coach White. He tried to talk me out of walking on.
Well, I guess so. You hadn't ever played high school
Well,
football.
they didn't know that. I didn't tell
Oh,
them.
okay.
And so the first 3 weeks of practice, I caught 6 touchdown passes against first-team defense.
Well, how'd you do that now that played high school football?
Well, that's why I walked on as a wide receiver, because you can either run and catch or you can't. And I figured this would get over pretty quick, and if I couldn't. And I don't know, there were 30-something walk-ons, and I think 12 of us made it.
We
And,
went to school about the same time. I was there from 70 to 74.
Okay, my first year there was 74.
Okay, so I was leaving. You were
Yeah,
getting there, huh?
and so we were getting ready to play Georgia Tech, and the coaches wanted me to play, but I had to have a meeting with Coach Bryant. So I went up, sat out there with his secretary, a lady named Linda Knowles, who's I still see I saw Linda back about 2 or 3 months ago, and she still remembers me.
Does she?
And but Coach Bryant was on the phone with Darrell Royal, so I
Had that cigarette in his mouth.
well, he wasn't smoking that day, but he called me in and he had this big old red leather sofa that didn't have any legs. And I'm not exaggerating, Steve. The desk was about eye level. I felt like I was 6 years old. But he started telling me what was expected and, you know, what they look for. And I'll never forget this. And it made it all worth it. He said, Gary, you've worked hard. You've done a good job for us. He said, I'm going to dress you. I'm not going to guarantee you get in the game. And I got in the game.
The real varsity game against Georgia Tech?
It was the
Freshman
junior
game?
varsity.
Yeah, freshman team, yeah.
Yeah, well, it was upperclassmen and freshmen, because back then freshmen could play. So they changed it around where even if you were, in my case, I was a junior. I transferred there from a junior college. And
Well, that's what that makes sense, and you were saying about it. Yes, get to your congressional career, just get back on the right track. Now, when you got there in 2015, were the Republicans in the majority? Have you been a majority? Who was Speaker?
Speaker was John Boehner.
So would you make friends with him right away? He's pretty good.
Well, not exactly, because during the campaign I told him that we were asked would we support Boehner for Speaker, and I said no. And the other guys had said no, so.
The guys running in your race had
Yeah,
said no.
running against me, they all said no, so kind of put me on the spot. So after I won the primary, I went up and had to meet with Boehner. And
Had he heard you won for him?
well, he hadn't heard that. So we're sitting there, and I'm sitting where I am. He's kind of sitting where you are. And I said, Mr. Speaker, before we get started, I just need to tell you something up front. I'm not going to vote for you for Speaker. And he was smoking. He smoked like a stack.
Where was Boehner from?
Ohio. So he says, well, I'm going to need your vote. I said, no, Mr. Speaker, you're going to be the Speaker. I'm fully aware of the consequences of what I'm telling you. And I said, but you need to understand, Alabama's one of the most conservative states in the country. I'm in a conservative district. And when we were asking one of our forums with all the candidates, and I said there were 6 other guys in the forum, in the race, we all said we wouldn't vote for you. And I said, so my objective was to win the race, to have this conversation. I said, but if the first thing I did when I got here is break my word to the voters,
Right.
not only would I lose their confidence, but you would immediately start to wonder when I would break my word to you. And I said, I want you to know right now, if I tell you something, you can absolutely count on it, and I'm going to prove it to you by not voting for you.
Well, was there an alternative Republican can't run a Speaker?
No, not really. It was one of those things, but to tell you the rest of it, I went back to him with an idea. I don't know, you know, I'm a policy guy.
Right.
And there were a couple of things, I was on the budget committee, a couple of things that I felt like needed to be addressed. One was we needed to stop the improper payments, which has about $300 billion a year right now. But we have inexhaustible reserves of oil and natural gas, and we had a self-imposed ban on exporting crude oil. So I went to Boehner and said, we need to repeal that and count that revenue in our budget. And he worked with me on it, and we got it done my first year in Congress. At the end of that year, we got that done.
Well, if there was no alternative, who did you vote for Speaker?
I voted for Jeff Sessions.
Well, Jeff's over in the Senate.
Yeah, but under the
oh,
rules
that's
of the
right.
House, you don't have to be a member of the House to be Speaker.
Yeah, I love old Jeff Sessions.
Yeah,
He's
so-
doing well, too.
Yeah, he's doing well. Some of the happiest people I know are not in Congress now.
I know it.
So-
But anyway, back to so they put you on the budget committee anyway, though.
He
Boehner
put me on
did?
budget, yeah. Put me on oversight, and Lamar Smith, who chaired Science, Space, and Technology, had seen my resume and literally called me before I got elected.
Now, who is this now?
Lamar Smith from Texas chaired the Science, Space, and Technology Committee. But he called me and said, I want you on my committee. He said, because I know you'll work. So I agreed to go on that committee.
Well, now, that'd be something like somebody Huntsville want to be on
Yeah.
or something. Was Kramer still in Congress from the Tennessee Valley? Or what?
No, it's Mo Brooks.
Mo was already in the
And
Congress.
Mo was on that committee, too. He was on there.
So have you been on budget the entire time?
No, my first 2 terms was on budget. and then I went on transportation infrastructure
After the third term.
after third term because I thought that was important, particularly trying to get the Northern Belt Line funded.
Spencer, they named that part of Jefferson after Spencer the other day, I-22. Did you see that?
I didn't see that.
They gave Spencer back. I said, put his name up there.
Well,
Part of being involved with it. Spencer made me aware of it. He called me 4 or 5 times and said, "You gonna write about it, aren't you?" Spencer,
well,
well, I don't think he could hear me whether I said no or not.
Yeah.
Spencer's like most people my age, his hearing's going a little bit.
yeah, well, and then probably the most influential committee in Congress is Energy and Commerce.
Yeah.
Has the broadest jurisdiction, probably 60-something%, maybe even more than that, of the major bills go through that committee. And Alabama hadn't had a Republican on that committee in 30 or 40
Was
years.
that the committee? Bevel wasn't on that.
No, Sonny Callahan was on
Callahan
that
was on there,
committee
yeah.
for a short time and then went to appropriations.
Uh-huh.
So I got on Energy and Commerce, and that
In your third term,
my fourth term.
fourth term. You're finishing your 5th term now.
Yes,
Running for your 6th term
right,
for the 6th district. 6th term for the 6th district.
yeah.
But you like being on that energy and commerce.
Well, I worked for 2 international engineering companies. One of them was combustion
So you're an
engineering.
engineer by profession.
My degree is operations management, which
Uh-huh.
is basically industrial engineering with a business degree. And so I've been really good on energy issues, on climate change and environment, and have really been a thorn in the Democrat side on those issues because I'm a policy guy. And but I've been very involved in healthcare. And in 2017, Trump's first year in office, you remember the healthcare bill that McCain killed? He voted thumbs down at 2:30 in the morning. Well, that bill had been pulled in the House, and Paul Ryan called me to thank me for the work I'd done on it. I'd worked directly with President Trump and some of his folks in the White House on the bill. And I told Paul that I thought we could get it back up. And that was on a Saturday. That Monday, I'd just gotten back in, and Vice President Pence called me. I'd known Mike for 30 years. He ran our think tank in Indiana. But I told Vice President Pence that I thought we could get it back up. And what I did was I brought in an amendment to cover people with pre-existing conditions, and had a group working with another group who had an analysis of the bill done as an outside group, actuarial group. And I went to the White House and explained this to President Trump, showed him that this had worked in the state of Maine, and all of this policy experience that I've had over the years really came into play right there, because I knew what had been done in other places. And I said, this can work, and it can bring down premiums for everybody in every age category. So he wanted his team to work with me on it. And it was on a Wednesday when I got a call from the President's Deputy Chief of Staff saying, we need to know what the numbers are. And I gave them to him. And I get a message back, can you be at a press conference at 9:30 in the morning to announce the Palmer Amendment? And that's what saved the health care bill, was that amendment to cover pre-existing conditions.
Well, that's really a feather in your hat. Does energy and transportation, they get a lot of health-related issues? All of them, most
all of your health care goes through Energy and Commerce.
I did not know that.
The tax side goes through Ways and Means.
There's no health committee in Washington, in the Congress, is there?
It's Energy and Commerce
Energy
and the
and Commerce.
Subcommittee on Health,
Okay.
which is chaired by a guy who's a representative from Kentucky, but he was born in Sheffield.
Sheffield?
Yeah.
You know,
Brett Guthrie.
Shelby used to always talk about McConnell being born in Athens.
That's right.
You know that? Every
Brad
time
Thompson, senator from Tennessee,
That's
was
right.
born in the
Sheffield.
Tri-Cities area.
You know,
Sheffield.
show you how bad I am predicting presidential races. I'm pretty good at state races and congressional races, but Bumble Thompson running for president one time, and I wrote the doggone nicest column about him because he looked like a president.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy had the gravitas. He was 6'8" or 6'6", gravelly voice, Watergate prosecutor, 2-term senator from Tennessee.
Really smart.
Smart. You could tell he was smart. Shelby loved him.
Yeah.
And I wrote the doggone, like, he's going to be president. I'm for him for president. And his wife even called me from Nashville. My column had gotten circulated around the country using it, and she called me and thanked me for it. And doggone, he dropped out the next day. so I thought, well, better not endorse somebody anymore.
Maybe he's afraid he'd win. So,
But back to you. To talk about this, let me ask you this question. In the 10 years, I don't remember history, but who all has been speaker and who all has been president you served with so far?
okay, I've been there 9 years, but
Boehner.
it was Obama was president.
When you
then
got
Trump,
there.
yeah, then Trump, and then and now Biden. The speakers have been Boehner, Paul Ryan, Kevin McCarthy, and now Mike Johnson. And Mike and I knew each other before either one of us were ever
I
elected.
perceive that you and Adder Holt are good friends with Johnson.
Yeah.
I figure both of y'all were.
Well, I've known him a long time.
You went to the border with Adder Holt on that the other day, didn't you? With
I
Adder
did,
Holt and
yeah.
Johnson.
Yeah.
But did you like McCarthy too, didn't you?
Yeah, I thought Kevin did a good job. I think, though, this is a problem that every speaker has to deal with, is how do you manage so diverse a group of people? And I get this all the time, how much people dislike the members of Congress from New York or California, but you have to have them to have a majority.
Yeah.
And to get to 218. But you can't please everybody. And when you start trying to accommodate everybody, then you're just digging a hole.
Yeah.
And I think that,
He tried to appease everybody.
yeah, and then there's certain expectations that I felt like we could have taken care of early on that that weren't, and then it starts to become personal. And I think a lot of it was personal. Mike's going to have the same challenges, even more so because Kevin's gone. We removed Santos from office, so that got us down to 220. Bill Johnson's leaving at the 21st of this month, so we'll be down at 219. And Steve Scalise is going to be gone the entire month of January for cancer treatment. He's got multiple myeloma. So we'll be down to 218. And people say, well, you're going to lose your majority. Well, no. The Democrats are at 213. And so we just need 214 votes to pass things.
Yeah, you mentioned this a while ago. I read this, or I've been told this over the years, even when Spencer was in the 6th District. The 6th District of Alabama, your district, is considered one of the most conservative and Republican in the country, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that this new wrinkle with trying to create this new Democratic district here in Montgomery didn't make, I think you pick up a talking Elmore, makes it even more.
I think so.
What is your area now? What part of Jefferson do you not get?
I lost most of Jefferson County.
Okay.
I have from North Jefferson, Warrior and Gardendale, and then it swings east, and I've got Trussville, and then Mountain Brook and Vestavia. I got a little bit of Homewood.
You still have Mountain Brook and Vestavia.
Yeah.
What is Trussville? They in your district?
Trussville is, and then I lost most of Homewood and part of Hoover, and then I've got all
They
of.
went in the 7th.
They went in the 7th. I've got all of Shelby, all of Bibb, all of Chilton, a little bit of Talladega County.
Have you
around
always
Talladega
had
Springs.
children?
Yes.
Have you always had Coosa?
No, I had it when I first got elected, and then they redrew it, and I lost it. Now I've got it back.
You got Coosa back.
Yeah, and Taga and Elmore, and I should be in pretty good shape. President Trump has endorsed me. I've been working with his policy group. I don't know if you saw the article in the Wall Street Journal back the middle of December where they talked about this, that Trump has surrounded himself with a new group of advisors that are very policy savvy, understand how the legislative process works in Congress, and they list me as one of them. Axios, which is another publication, it's kind of a left of center publication, and you usually don't want to see your name in that, but they wrote about the people who are working with Trump, and they said there are 3 members in the House that should see their
I think we
influence
should be in
elevated.
good shape. You'd be in good shape, and a lot of our delegation will be if Trump wins.
Yeah.
Alabama will be a lot better off politically in Washington. Now, we only got about 2 minutes left. You're on a policy committee that helps create who gets on what committees. And I wrote about that, how you really had much influence as Rogers getting chairman of Armed Services and Adderholt getting his cardinalship because of your position. Mm-hmm. But you're going to stay on energy and commerce, energy and transportation. But the issue thing, talk about that just a minute.
I'm on energy and commerce, and I'm also on oversight. I'm not on transportation anymore. They wouldn't let me have both of those. But I chair the policy committee, and we've turned that into our think tank. And if people are interested, they can go to republicanpolicy.house.gov and see our guided issues and see the positions we're taking. But the committee you're talking about is the steering committee.
Right.
And because I'm in leadership, I rank 5th or 6th, depending on who you ask, in leadership. I'm on the steering committee, and that's the committee that determines who gets on a committee and who chairs a committee. And it was very influential in Mike Rogers chairing Armed Services. It'll be very influential going forward at some point with Robert Adderholt potentially chairing appropriations. And you wrote an article, you wrote a column that was really good about how things have changed in terms of the structure with Shelby and Sessions leaving.
Right.
The power
is in the House.
And I, like I say, I've only been there 9 years and 5 days, and I'm now the 3rd most senior Republican in the entire delegation.
Rogers and Adderholt all have been there longer.
Yeah, they've been there longer. But for us to only have 6 representatives among the Republicans and to have 2 on the steering committee when there's only 30 in total, that's very, very significant.
And maybe only 5 after this time. We'll see.
Could be.
Well, Gary, I hate to say it, time's up.
Well,
I appreciate you taking time to do this. Maybe we can do it again in future years too, because you got this is Talga Elmore area now, and so we're glad to have you. And these folks are glad to have you down their neck of the woods, have somebody with some seniority. Folks, our guest tonight has been Congressman Gary Palmer, a 5-year veteran of the House of Representatives in Washington from the 6th Congressional District, and a good conservative Republican. He's on the ballot on March 5th too for re-election. So keep him in mind, Gary Palmer, 6th District Congressman. Thank y'all for watching. Hope you tune again next week for Alabama Politics.